Hey everybody, Pete from the GenWell Project here. Another beautiful day on this Tuesday for another connected conversation. Great to have everybody here today. Really excited about our conversation once again. We really do enjoy bringing these conversations and connecting you with people, ideas, tools that can help us all get through these challenging times. Today, let's finish off with the GenWell Project is a human connection movement started in 2016, and our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by reminding people about the importance of human connection, something that most of us were never educated on, and inspiring us to take action, because it's the taking action that actually can help us cope through these challenging times, find solutions, and build the resilience that will get us to the other side. Connected Conversations is a series of conversations that we launched back in 2016, at the start of COVID, when we wanted to bring people together with people, ideas, and tools that will help us all get through these challenging times as we're more disconnected and isolated than ever before. A big shout out to all the volunteers who help make the GenWell Project what it is, and everybody is welcome to join us on this human connection movement by sharing our messages. Join us on our social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and what's the other one? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn for those business types, because on each of those platforms, we post daily tips, tools, ideas, and research that help us all understand more about the importance of human connection in our lives, and again, get us to take action. Thank you to our partner, JP Weiser, for their support in helping us spread this message across Canada and eventually around the world. Today, we're really thrilled to have Kathryn Woods with us. Kathryn's a GenWell Project enthusiast who reached out to us a couple of weeks ago, and we had some incredible conversations, and I'm really looking forward to following up with our conversation today. Kathryn Woods is from Paris, Ontario, born and raised, the proud mom of 2 kids and a registered nurse with a background in the neonatal intensive care unit. And she's also a stroke survivor, which we'll touch on a bit today. She's currently working on a social service worker diploma and is a passionate community volunteer and advocate for social change. Over the last few years, she's noticed a real disconnection happening in communities across Ontario and indeed across the country. She wants to be proactive in exploring the impact of social isolation and loneliness and its impact on our physical and mental well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to introduce and bring on to the show Kathryn Wood.
Hi.
Hi, Kathryn.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Great to have you. Honestly, you and I have been chatting for a couple of weeks now, and first and foremost, thank you for reaching out and showing your support for the GenWell Project and the Human Connection Movement. And I really think that our conversations and our conversation today are going to lead to, the inspiration of us doing some stuff together. But I think there's a lot of knowledge that can be shared with the broader community as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Let me just add this a little ticker so people know who you are and what we're talking about today. So, Kathryn, I know you've got a lot of history that in our conversations that you've spoken about, and I think we always start off our show by asking people how they're doing through COVID-19, and I think in most cases people come with a background that's clear to people as to who they are, what they've been doing, whether that's their profession or whatever. I think this is a different conversation today, and I'd love it if you would share a little bit of your journey with the audience so that they understand, why and how we got connected and maybe why human connection has taken on such a priority in your life.
Sure. Well, first of all, I follow quite a few organizations out of the UK. I feel that they're far ahead of the game of human connection, fighting loneliness and isolation. And they included me in a group, and I was referred to you. I say, check it. All right, I will. He's right here.
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? So yeah, so that's how I started following GenWell, and from there I just reached out because over COVID, it's not been too bad for me personally. I have 2 kids that are busy, keep me busy, keep me out of trouble. I'm in school full time now as well. So personally, it wasn't for me, but I could see where it was being a problem for a lot of people that I know or that were in my community.
Yeah. Now I know a little more about your background, and it includes your parents. It includes a health crisis that you went through. Maybe you can give the audience a touch of that, and maybe we could delve into those a little bit more, into the role that you play and the role Human Connection played in those experiences as well.
Sure. Well, my parents are both in their 80s. They live in the house my dad built back in, I don't know, 1960 something. And they've both been doing really, really well, managing on their own. But when COVID came, because of their age, we sort of kept them sheltered in place, sheltered at home, didn't expose them to really any social settings. Grandkids weren't going over. So it was just like Groundhog Day for them. Like every single day was the same. There was nothing to look forward to, no chores to do, no. My dad also decided to give up his license at that time. So their cognitive decline has been rapid since COVID, I would say. So I'm over there at least 3 times a day trying to, maintain the house for them, help them with personal care, groceries, banking, that kind of thing, and trying to provide some interaction like we're having today, right? They're not online. They're past that point where they could even begin to understand how to work a computer or anything like that. So I'm their social person. Lucky them. So so that's, and I mean, they're an example of probably thousands of people in the same position as them.
Oh, hey, I think, probably the first thing that I think was highlighted in the pandemic was our seniors. And because obviously they were the ones who were most immediately hit with the health implications of COVID-19. But I think as we've drawn on, and frankly, I think we're month 7, maybe it's month 8 now. But as it's drawn on, I think when we talk about the implications of social isolation, I think we've now included our kids, obviously, as we went through the summer. We know about our seniors. And frankly, now I think what's really raising its head as well is people in the workplace, and people who are used to having a water cooler and a coffee machine and a place to go have a bite to eat with a colleague. And those 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day that we were spending, around a community of people has disappeared. But I think your parents are, you're right. We've always said it takes a village. And I think we usually use that in association with kids and bringing up our kids. But I think what we're all recognizing now is how much we need a village to raise everybody and support everybody, throughout the course of life. Because now we're going to have health implications. But I think most people are pretty confident that there's going to be some financial implications and employment implications. We can already see it happening. And I think supporting one another through that is going to be critical as well.
I agree.
So I know that you've got your parents and you again, and I talk about this quite a bit, which is the sandwich generation. You're responsible for your parents. You're responsible for young people and keeping them connected. How have you managed that, through COVID? It sounds like off the top, you said you were busy.
Yeah.
But, are you finding time for you and your mental health and your physical health so that you can, put on that oxygen mask so that you can help others?
The easy answer is no. I'm not. But I'm trying, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying. And it's a real balancing act to try and meet all the physical and mental and emotional demands or requirements of your kids. And now I have the same on the other end with my parents. So for a while, I felt like I was really burning the candle at both ends, trying to make just a whirlwind, trying to make everybody happy, and not feeling settled that they weren't settled. I have my parents, I come home, okay, I got to get home because my kids are there. And it's not because they're young that they don't, they can fend for themselves or at that age, but it's just that I'm not there. So then I'm here and I'm worried about, okay, now my parents, I know, we're sitting at home doing nothing. So I fly back out there. So it's a balancing act that I don't know I'll ever get 100% right, but I can only do the best I can do.
Yeah, and I think that's the insight. I think in these conversations, number one is I want to make sure that people understand that they're not the only ones that are feeling this.
Yeah.
And I certainly over the course of the summer trying to find the balance of doing a job and entertaining our son while we were trying to get it all in, and it wasn't easy. And so I think it's important for people to recognize, hey, we're living it differently, but we truly are all in this together and experiencing, a global pandemic and the repercussions. But there was one other thing in your past, Kathryn, that I think also probably has an impact on you each and every day. And I think that was a health scare that you had. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I had my son in 2007 and my daughter in 2008. And when she was 5 days old, I had a stroke out of nowhere, out of the blue, which as a healthcare professional, I know is typical. And it was sort of chalked up to my having just been recently pregnant and having to have having my daughter through cesarean section. And it's kind of just, I don't know, it's just one of those random things that happen. But then I had a second one 13 months later, which got me admitted. And at least then they did some more diagnostic tests and they found out that I do have a little hole in my heart, which like a quarter of us have. And I think it's like 1 or less than 1% actually ever have a problem related to that. And I'm lucky and I'm one of the 1%.
There you go.
But yeah. Scary time for sure.
And so tell me what impact, when we chatted the other day, I think maybe this might have been your first introduction to the sense and the feeling of isolation and disconnection. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your journey through your stroke and what impact did it have on you, both physically, obviously with the stroke, but maybe even mentally as well.
Yeah. So with the first stroke, it affected my vision and balance. The second stroke, it was my speech imbalance. All my physical deficits, luckily, were very quickly resolved. But that doesn't mean that I didn't have any post-stroke stress or anxiety. And that was the big part for me was that, what was the plan going forward? Are they going to try and close this hole? Some doctors, yes, some doctors, no. Stay on aspirin, don't stay on aspirin. So my treatment was never set in stone. There was no concrete plan for me to focus on. So I had lots of people, I know lots of doctors and lots of healthcare professionals, in addition to friends and family who were around me all the time, offering help and offering support, which is great. But in the middle of all that, I was completely isolated and alone. I'm glad that you're with me. I'm glad that you did my groceries for me. I'm glad that, you took my kids for a couple hours or helped me clean my house. That's awesome. But I am alone because none of you are going through what I'm going through. So that really got me thinking, okay, I'm now kind of on the flip side of healthcare and I'm seeing it from a different angle and different lens. And this was because of a stroke or a health scare, but there's got to be people out there that are, going to work or, going about their life and they seem normal, but they could very well be feeling the same thing. There's human connection. And that's, I think, a little bit different than just a passing kind of casual, I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's your work people, which you need, but what's your connection to them? How stable is it? How solid is it? How meaningful is it? And that's what I kind of like looking at different avenues of helping people who are feeling maybe the same as I am.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, there's two sides of it for me. Number one, what the research shows is that, our health is correlated not just to deep, meaningful relationships with our family, but with those casual collisions with people that we see in our neighborhood, whether that's the barista, whether that's the mailman, whether it's the person across the street. So, connection happens everywhere. But I think what you just described there for me, and we're having Yvonne Heath on the show on Thursday, and she talks about the word grief. And I think most of us think about grief from the perspective of death.
Yeah.
But really, grief happens when we go through any challenging time. So, in your case, it was people couldn't experience, what you were going through from a health perspective with a stroke. But I think and this certainly pre-COVID, if you lost a job, and I stepped away from a couple jobs over the last decade, and I often talk about it as though I was in a marathon and I stepped off to the side of the course. And everybody just kept running by me. And that sense of, hey, every time you're going through something that has forced you to step to the side while everybody else is just going on their way, as you say, people were there, they were helping you, buying your groceries, getting everything that you could need, but they still aren't going through that experience. And that extends from health to financial to relationship issues, to kid issues. And this is really the message of the GenWell Project is, we're not about one particular issue. We're not a mental health campaign. We're not about unemployment. We're not about women. We're not about men. We're not about seniors or young people. We want to celebrate human connection for the role it can play in supporting all of us when we go through those challenging times in our life. And I think it's really powerful to think, and I'd love to, hear your thoughts on what could have been better. What could people have done better for you while you're going through the recovery of your stroke? The world can't stop. We know that. But, is there something that somebody could have said? Is there something that somebody could have done? Is there something you would have wanted from somebody while you were going through the recovery from your stroke that would have made that slight difference in helping you to, and I don't know if it's empathizing or feeling like they were more connected to you in a meaningful way? Have you got a thought? Like, can you think back, or is there anything that people could have done? Because I think that's a real insight that we could actually build from if we could identify what that is.
I think for me, it would be everything that you're doing is great, but I really needed someone to just take the time and just sit down and say, what is it like? Like, what is it like being you now? What are you thinking? What are you afraid of? What are you hopeful about? That's probably what was missing. I think they were probably trying to show that through what they were doing for me, which was absolutely 100% needed and appreciated. But I just felt like there's all this commotion going, like you said, all this commotion going on around me, and I'm just trapped in my body with all these thoughts, and no one's really asking me, and I don't even know if I had the words then to know what I wanted to say. But looking back, that's probably the one thing that I would say about that.
It's funny. I'm in a conversation with a health agency who is, I guess, connected to Peer-to-Peer Canada, and I think maybe would it, it's about an ear. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason, but somebody to listen and really understand the situation. But I think, peer-to-peer support is growing as I'll call it a service, as a support for people. And I think that probably nobody's going to be able to support you, and nobody will be able to do what you can do for somebody else going through a stroke and recovering from a stroke when you've had that lived experience.
Right.
So I think that's really powerful information. I think oftentimes we want to help. And I think this is, human connection starts by listening and understanding. And that is, human connection. Some of the outputs of human connection are greater empathy, greater compassion, greater resilience. And it all stems from a greater understanding of the challenges that people are facing, or frankly, the successes that they might be celebrating. So I think that's a really, really important message. So you're a nurse, and you've been how many years as a nurse?
23.
So 23 years as a nurse, and all of a sudden you get this idea that, I love nursing, I'm passionate about it,
Yep.
but what I'm seeing around me, and I'm whether it's in my own life or in the lives of others, I see a greater disconnection than ever before. And you choose a new path. So, can you tell me a little bit about how that journey happened and how you got to this new direction in your life?
Yeah. So I'm going about working as a nurse, and I had a great aunt who was like a third grandma, and she was very independent. And she lived in her own 2-bedroom apartment, I think, till she was around 92, 93, somewhere around there. And she did not drive. She had never driven her whole life. So my mom and dad used to have her out to our house every Sunday night and play euchre and have like little tea and snacks, whatever. But then she started asking, could I come by? And I'm like, sure. So on my days off, I go and we have a visit, do groceries, banking, all that sort of stuff. And it was sort of after a couple months of doing that, I'm like, she has nobody, no connection. If I'm not, the one time I'm there a week, and then the other time that she's at my parents. So there's 2 times during the week that she has human physical connection with people. I'm like, that can't be good. And I mean, I think more needs to be done about it. After that, like I said, I had my stroke and I felt like, I'm just, something's just not sitting well with me. And I didn't want to give up nursing, but I wanted to help people in another way. And so I started, Googling, organizations, ways to help people who are isolated or human connections. And that's how I sort of came this path and how I got connected with you.
Which is amazing. And I love the fact that, the amazing Google box can just about find us anything. Has there been any research, before you started to, or as you started to connect the dots, did you look into research and really validate that what your suspicions were about the need for greater human connection were valid? And if there was 1 or 2 pieces of information or facts, what were they, and how did you respond to them?
There's actually quite a bit of research out there on the correlation between your physical and mental health and your connection to community and your feelings of value or self-worth. A lot of it had been mental health issues, but I would say that since COVID, it's really highlighted the physical. High blood pressure is one. Stress and anxiety is a mental thing, right? Increase in falls is something else that has people going to emergency rooms because they're alone, and they don't either have people to check in on them, or they don't know how to ask for help. I'd say that COVID has really highlighted the problem of this. I think it was always sort of assumed with our elderly population, but I think COVID has sort of kind of obviously highlighted that even more, but kind of broken that barrier where it can be anybody, anywhere. I often say that COVID is like, we are all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats trying to navigate this place, right? So that's sort of what I kind of drew me into, is the health consequences of being isolated, socially isolated from society. So I think it's been highlighted, and now hopefully more will be done about it, and more research will be done about it, and then more research ends into programs and different organizations to help.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and that's exactly, other than an experience that I went through with GenWell on the blackout of 2003, and it was probably we launched in 2016, but it was probably in the mid teens, so 2014, 2015, when I started to do the research as well. And that's when I found that it's the single largest indicator of health. That's the Harvard study led by Dr. Robert Waldinger. Reduces anxiety and depression, which we know is skyrocketing, increases empathy, compassion, resilience, which, in a world which is at times seems like it's falling and crumbling to pieces, and we need to bring people together more than ever before. Isn't that something that we could all benefit from as well? Strengthens our immune system. So whether it's a stroke, whether it's cancer, or whether it's avoiding something like COVID-19, what a great benefit from maintaining those social networks. And the one that always amazes me is just it can increase your chances of living longer by up to 50%.
Yeah.
And yet most people have no idea of some of the simple facts, let alone the impressive facts like that really reinforce why we all need to build our community. And community to me isn't a geography. Community is your family, your friends, your neighbors. It could be anybody. Yep. It's who's in your group of people that you can lean on in challenging times. And I think I mentioned to you on the phone the other day that there's a study that just came out of a researcher at Massachusetts General, also at Harvard, that the single greatest preventative action that we can take to avoid depression is social connection. So our focus, as I think you see more than most, is about prevention and helping people stay healthy and not ending up in the emergency room so that they have to see somebody like you in a crisis, or even at their family doctor. Right. We cannot continue to wait till people are in a crisis before we start to take action. Absolutely. So you're in the middle of your diploma for social work. What do you think the future looks like for Kathryn when she gets that little piece of paper in her hands and she's all fired up with, now you're a nurse, now you got the diploma that says you're a social worker. That's a really powerful combination, in my opinion. And so I'd love to hear what you think you have planned and where you think you're going to take that.
Wow. I'm hoping to take it into an organization that has their primary objective is to help reconnect people in my community or our community or our country or our province globally, and do my bit to be proactive, like you said, help people make the connection so that they aren't coming to see me in my other role, right, at the hospital. It would definitely impact our healthcare spending if we could be more proactive and help these people and keep them out of the healthcare system. Because right now, even with COVID, it's not really a place you want to go to.
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's where I'm heading. I'm hoping, it was always, I had the desire and the will, and nursing is part social work. Same with all our first responders, right? Fire, police, it's part of it. Their job is social work. But it's just seeing the nursing part and not having the social service worker kind of background was really sort of a roadblock for me. That's why I thought, well, let's get out the pencil and the paper and get back to school and see if I cannot get that component so I have the whole picture behind me when I go to find something to do.
It's interesting that you say that, and I love the fact that you are seeking greater knowledge, because I think if you actually look at the research that validates all the health benefits, both mental and physical, for social connection, when you were last at school, that research didn't even exist. And isn't that the interesting thing? And I think this is the challenge, even with social prescribing, which, a friend and acquaintance of mine, Kate Mulligan, has been running through the Ontario Alliance, Community Health Alliance. Social prescribing is an important thing to get the message out into the hands of people. But even doctors that went to med school, nurses that went to school, the reality is they weren't educated on it. So it's now getting everybody up to speed on this information. And as I say, I think the mistake we could all make is wait until people are sick and then they get to the doctor's office and then we say, hey, I think actually you're lonely and you should go and spend some time with other people. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually create a movement like the GenWell Project, the Human Connection Movement, and actually advise people through their offices, through their workplaces, through schools for young kids, through our communities, through whatever the community group might be, and actually get this message out in advance of the illness and the crisis, because we know that it can lead to, physical, from inflammation to dementia to, lots of different things, plus the mental health sides, which I think are pretty obvious for people. This is the challenging part, is I think even the experts are in many cases aren't fully aware of all the benefits that are available just through the simple act of connecting with somebody else.
And we may not even know all the benefits yet, right?
It's well said.
Yeah, we really got to start. I mean, and like I said, people are either unaware of how to go about asking for help or getting some socialization, or they're desperate and they're doing these really creative things. There's a man out of the UK who posted something in the paper. I'm, a 70-year-old widower. I would like to make some friends, and nobody responded. Then he made up business cards and he was handing them out. Someone likes to go to the pub and have a beer or a cup of tea or something with me. Nobody responded. He wound up, now that COVID, putting a big poster in his front window saying, "I'm lonely. I'd like to make some friends."
It's sad. I often say that I think we've built physical and emotional walls around ourselves for the last few decades, and we're now waking up, completely isolated. Yeah. Similar stories. I remember there was a couple in Italy who eventually somebody called the police because they hadn't seen them. It was an elderly couple, and the police knocked on the door, and when they walked in, the elderly couple was sitting there crying, sitting on the couch. Then the local police department made a meal, sat down with them, connected with them. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a simple thing for us all to do. But you mentioned, you mentioned the UK, you mentioned it earlier, there's no question that I too agree that the UK is further ahead. I think their population is older than we are. So Kate Shurdy and the Campaign to End Loneliness is doing incredible work across the pond. Yeah. I think Australia has some stuff going. There was a conference last week in the US that's trying to rally a group of leaders, both the experts, Julianne Holt-Lundstadt, you've got Dr. Waldinger at Harvard, you've got Laurie Santos at Yale with the happiness class. There's so many people that are on the right path, and what I think it really is, and I think what the GenWell Project really is the catalyst that can say, hey, we'll take all the research, we'll take the understanding, we'll take the people who are saying we're lonely and isolated, and hey, let's create the catalyst that actually gets us to take the action, which is giving everybody the excuse to reach out to one another and actually say, hey, Mr. Senior that's lonely in your house, hey, I'm going to on this Saturday reach out to you because I know it's good for you, and the amazing thing is it's good for me as well.
Oh yeah, it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah. So tell me, so you've got all this information. Now we're in the middle of a lockdown. Now we're experiencing COVID-19. Yes, you're not fully through your diploma yet, but with your nursing background and with the explanation of your own experience with your parents, with your stroke, with your recovery, you already get this. So my question to you is, what do you think you might do? Even our connection, your connection to the UK and the Campaign to End Loneliness, what do you think you might do now that might be able to help people, even in sharing that story about the elderly gentleman? What do you think you could do now to maybe encourage some connection, even where you live?
Even where I live, yeah. So we were talking about trying to get something online because, unfortunately, with the lockdown and down here in Paris, we're just sort of maintaining our physical distance. And I always like to say physical distance, not socially distance, right? Big difference. So we're not as in a hot spot like Toronto and Ottawa. So I'm trying to just start something in my community using social media for now to kind of get it up and running, get people aware. Like we were talking about that yesterday. That's what I'd like to do. I've got a list this afternoon of people to call, and they are seniors who are living alone. Just to call. It's not even a check-in. It's just to say check-in kind of implies that there's something wrong. I think just call to say hi. I'm just calling to say hi, or set up my call for next week. My daughter, 11, going on 25. right? But she loves to write. And so I'm like, hey, here's some fancy paper. Start writing some letters. So she's been writing letters during COVID, and it's
Beautiful.
something going to your mailbox and seeing a letter there, sitting there, right? It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just something simple that says, I was thinking about you today, you know?
Yeah, I think it's really, you're right. It is a simple thing. And unfortunately, I think the world, two things. I think prior to COVID, the world was so fast paced, distracted, and pressure filled that most of us couldn't actually think of those simple things because we were so caught up in just trying to keep up with what was going on all around us, that the idea of sitting down and writing a letter was just so far out of the everyday thought patterns for people that it just wasn't happening. And now we're in COVID, and I think there's two ways that people are responding. I think there's some people like you and your daughter who are saying, okay, we're okay. We've got food, water, shelter, safety, security, Maslow's fundamental needs. We've got human connection because we're connected as family, and maybe you've gotten some other connections, whether that's physically distant with a neighbor or whether it's with, colleagues at the office, or obviously maybe online with your schooling. But there's the other part, is recognizing that some people are overwhelmed, whether it's because of homeschooling, whether it's because of, fear of losing their job or working too long. And just the people who are feeling comfortable have such a great opportunity to make a difference on others. Yep. And, I think we all just need to be raising our consciousness of, hey, that little effort, that little letter that you're talking about writing can make all the difference in the world for somebody else.
And that goes back to we're all in the same storm, but I firmly believe we're all in separate boats.
And I think I think the letter is we launched our campaign back in May called Just One More. And our message was really what you're doing, which is, hey, just one more letter, one more phone call, one more, outreach to somebody, phone, whatever we can do to let people see us, hear us, and let them feel like they belong. I was reading another article this morning that just talked about a senior who said, if this is the way my life is going to be, then, I'm either going to die of being old or I'm going to die of being lonely. So let's figure this thing out so we can move forward. And I think that's such a powerful message. If you've spent 80, 90, 100 years on this planet, and this is the way you're going to spend the end of it, it seems like it's almost too much to take for some.
And it is for some. I firmly believe that.
And so, we chatted about it yesterday. You touched on it now, but I've got an idea for you, and I think we should make this happen. And I think it's, I was thinking about it yesterday after we chatted, and I thought Paris Connects is the concept. And we can put this video up on your social. You can, we can create a little post for you. And I think it's as simple as just getting a bunch of people onto a Zoom call, and maybe it's only for 30 minutes. And it's really not only sharing the information about how important human connection is, but giving people a simple, easy way for them to get connected. There are certainly going to be people who don't have the technology or the capability to use technology, but maybe even if you enlighten some of the people in Paris to think about that elderly person that lives next door, down the street, who has, lives alone, maybe it's not always about you directly linking to the elderly, but maybe it's about awakening the rest of us to the role that we can play, and everybody can take their own step. So are we going to do this, Kathryn? Yeah. I love it. Honestly, this is what the GenWell Project is all about. Our goal is to inspire people to take action. On GenWell weekends, when we could see people face to face, we wanted people to make us the excuse to reach out to their neighbors and have a barbecue.
Right.
With your fellow colleagues and, have a barbecue, have a coffee, get connected, understanding that you're helping not only yourself, but other people as well. And I think, the idea of actually starting in a small town like Paris, Ontario, population,
like 12 or 13,000 maybe now.
Population 12, 13,000. What an amazing test case to see what we can accomplish. And I think a really interesting thing to see, and I'd be curious on your perspective, small towns are said to be so much more connected. They're supposed to be, a slower pace of life, and we're all hunky-dory, and we're seeing each other at the hoedown every Saturday night, with our partners or with our friends. What's the real story, Kathryn?
The real story is that small towns are growing exponentially without the infrastructure to support the growth. That is what's happening in Paris. So we have a lot of people that we don't know and that they don't know us. So we literally have one main street, but you can walk down it, aside from COVID, you could walk down it on a Saturday afternoon in the summer and I don't even recognize anybody. So that's the amount of growth we have. And everyone is either facing their phone or just kind of, I don't even know, it's like a trance, like nobody is like, we used to be, hey, how are you? Even if you didn't know them, you recognize the family they were from or knew their brother, whatever. Hey, how's it going? Hi, good morning. None of that seems to happen now. It's like everyone's in their little bubble and afraid to be that first person to say, hey, good morning.
So would you say that small towns are facing the same pace, pressure, and distraction as the big cities? And that this idea that there's a separation between urban and rural, and that life is so peachy keen in the rural communities, it might be a little misguided?
Yes, I would say so, because everybody from the big cities is coming
more so now than ever. Yeah.
Right. So, I'm glad that people love it here and that they're coming here. It's just, I find that small towns, it's just not increasing by, a few families every year. It's increasing by hundreds or thousands of people, and they're commuting back to Toronto. So they're just not having the time to get invested in the community. And like I said, nobody's talking.
Yeah. And I'm going to actually give a plug for the GenWell Project, because our original aspiration was to be a catalyst, similar to the blackout in 2003. So if we had 2 weekends a year, one in the spring and one in the fall, when everybody is in their community because kids are back from school, because, we're not on holidays, on summer vacation, do you think that actually would make a positive impact if we all had an opportunity and an excuse to reach out to one another and actually say to our neighbors, our friends, the community, hey, this is a weekend to celebrate human connection. Why don't we get connected?
I think it would. I mean, Paris, whether you were born and raised here or you've moved here, the people do support the community, that's for sure. And so an event like that, I'm sure, would draw people. I think it might draw the same people for a couple of times if you ran it like twice a year.
Yeah.
But, word spreads.
Yeah. This is exactly what we've run a GenWell Project barbecue. A neighbor had a pancake breakfast. We are not going to change the world in one weekend. It took us 30 to 40 years of doing what we've been doing. And I watched Simon Sinek the other day talk about Milton Friedman and the capitalist economy, and the fact that, for 40 years, our businesses have been focused on, growing the bottom line. And we weren't worried about building our communities and other things. So this dog-eat-dog world that we've created over the last 30 to 40 years, it's going to take time for us to wean people off of the ways in which we looked at the world around us. And we were fearful of each other. And it got even worse when we added this thing into it, because, now everybody's posting their curated human highlight reel. And, now we're even fearful to walk out of our house without our hair beautifully coiffed and our clothes looking magnificent, because God forbid anybody should think that we don't have all our stuff together. So, what we're trying to do, and this is where we're trying to rally certainly the political community to say, hey, this is a benefit to every mayor, to every leader across this country. But I would love to see every nurse, every doctor, jumping onto the GenWell Project and saying, hey, we were living in the most fast-paced, distracted world in history. And if we could actually rally people around a positive message like a human connection day or weekend, that, because we certainly celebrate lots of negatives. We certainly, celebrate or identify, this addiction or that health issue or that, crisis. And we celebrate those days. Well, why don't we actually start focusing on celebrating the positives and the actions that people should be taking? Because I think that will actually get people to focus more on, it's no different than we say to our kids, don't tell them what not to do, tell them what to do. And hopefully, they'll be more likely to take that action. So I share that only because, as I listen to conversations repeatedly, I see how important a catalyst is for all of us. Because I'm a pretty social guy. But even I don't want to be the guy who knocks on my neighbor's door and goes, hey, I'm having people together. Would you like to come over? But if I can actually say, hey, the GenWell Project is having their thing this weekend and we should all get together because it's good for our health, then maybe more people in Paris, Ontario and across this country will say, oh, so it's about actually making my life better?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then sure. Then I'll come too.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, I want to say thank you for the conversation today, but we always have one last question that we ask our guests. And that's really, when this is all over and when you have an opportunity to get back with, we'll call it the new normal, but let's say it has some resemblance to, our old days, vaccine in hand, therapeutics in hand. What do you think the first thing you want to do when you can get back to the new normal? What do you want to do to celebrate that?
What I would like to do is I would like to take my kids over to my parents and not worry. That's the thing. I don't want to worry about transmitting anything to my parents. I want my parents to be able to go back to Tim Hortons and do a regular routine. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Something for my kids and something for my parents.
Yeah, I think there's so much in there. I think human connection is exactly what people are missing the most, and especially with those that we're closest to. And even your word, the word you used there, which was routine, letting us all get back into some of the routines that we were used to, because it's when we are thrown out of our routines that we get a little wonky. And so, and it's when we're not feeling so set in our routine, when we get anxious, we get nervous, we struggle both emotionally and physically, and why we need human connection more than ever right now. So Kathryn, I just want to say thank you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I would even argue just to say is that it's not even replacing a routine with something else. For a lot of people, there's nothing. Like their routine is gone, and there's nothing to fill that gap.
Yeah. Well, and a conversation can fill that gap if we can get everybody to be more conscious like you have with your daughter, whether it's letters, whether it's reaching out, and with the new Paris Connects program, which is launching this week in Paris, Ontario. Honestly, I'm really excited for it, Kathryn. I think it's going to be really powerful, and you and I will chat after this, maybe tomorrow, and we'll get the pieces put together. Because if we can lead by example and show how quickly one person online can connect a community in the meantime, until we get back to those face-to-face connections that are so good for us, I think that could be really powerful.
It will be. Yep.
All right. Kathryn, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your story. And thank you for your support of the Human Connection Movement, because together we can make the world a happier and healthier place. You are welcome. Thanks for starting it. Yeah, you're welcome. Cheers. All right. Take care. Ciao for now. Bye. Bye.